there. Yeah, we have a label printer. So we even print all our own labels, all the Godfather stuff. Some of them we still buy in if they're really good, but depends on what it is.
Now I noticed that there's a few computers and a few graphs going on over there. What does that all mean?
Well, as we've talked about earlier, quality is super key to what we do, and it's what we promise our customers in every batch of coffee they buy. Right. So we've got to record what we're doing. And so data's really key. And so every time we do a roast, we're using thermocouples and different probes to log every change in temperature, every movement in gas. And so we make sure that we do that for every single roast we do, so that we can either chase a profile that's already worked really well and do it again, or avoid doing something that didn't yield really great results. And so our roasting team spend a lot of effort making sure that we record that and check to make sure that it's doing what we want. Even from the rate of rise of temperature, how quickly the coffee beans are changing in temperature to how much gas we're putting in there, and then how quickly we reach first crack, which is a process in coffee where the water in the coffee bean vaporizes, similar to popcorn, and goes pop, and then that kicks into the final stage of roasting, where we get the development on the bean, and they start picking up those lovely, delicious caramelized flavors and stop tasting like kind of green animal feed. Yeah. And then we've got to know when we want to drop the coffee into the cooling tray to stop the roasting process entirely. All of that we record through our roasting software.
Okay. And is there certain elements to the beans that you're looking for once it's been roasted and it comes out onto the cooling tray?
Yeah, for sure. We even check the beans while we're roasting. We've got a little probe. Now, you can kind of smell them and you can kind of have a look at the different colors of the beans, and each unique origin will have different coloration and roast slightly differently. And so our roasters are really in tune to what's going to highlight a roast going well compared to what's going to highlight a roast going poorly. But then when you've got the final coffee, each coffee again will exhibit different characteristics that we're looking for. So, like this Brazilian coffee, which is one of our major partners, is going to be a little bit mottled. It's a pulped natural coffee, and so it does exhibit almost an inconsistency in coloration, but we know that's the case. Whereas if we had, say, a washed coffee from our Ugandan partner that had bizarre coloration, we might be a bit more concerned. But that's all just coming down to experience and understanding what each bean is going to do and how it's going to behave in the roaster.
Okay, and now you can get washed beans and unwashed beans. What are the difference?
Great question, and I'm glad you asked. I personally think that the processing method used on the coffee cherries and the beans at origin, so at the farm or at the processing level, probably has just about the biggest impact on what that coffee is going to taste like when you've roasted it and when you brew it. And so there's a number of different processing methods that I can kind of go into. But to make it easy, there's washed coffee and then there's natural coffee. Okay. So washed coffee is where you would hull the cherry off the beans and you would wash it with water, and you would allow it to ferment for some period of time, but pretty quickly, so that there's very little fermentation, very little flavour is imparted on the coffee from that fermentation, as opposed to natural coffee, where you pick the coffee and you literally leave it to ferment in the cherry before, at the point of processing that coffee to get it into, bean form so we can roast it, and then you remove the cherry. And obviously, when something ferments, like a cherry, it's going to impart fermenty, fruity flavours into the seed. Whereas with a washed coffee, you get a lot more bright characteristics, often cleaner in flavour, and often has a higher level of acidity as well, because it hasn't been broken down by that fermentation occurring in the cherry. At Common Folk, we really love both varieties of processing, and we purchase coffees of both. They each have their own kind of base in our blends and as a single origin. But I'm personally a massive sucker for some really funky natural coffees that other places might not be able to get access to, because we can work directly with our farmers to do them. But then made a great clean washed espresso is also pretty tasty. So, and you can see the difference even in the green coffee and the smell of it between a washed and a natural.
Now it's getting hot in here. You guys also do a cold brew.
We do.
Perfect. Let's go check that out.